Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome our guest here today. He is an expert of virtual summits, which for those of you in online course creation, if you're looking for probably the greatest way of increasing your list size and getting out there and reaching and even generating revenue in the education space as well, summits can be probably the greatest way to be doing this right now. And our guest today is an expert on that and has been doing it for quite some time. If you want to learn a little bit more about him, there's a couple of places you can check him out. virtualsummitmastery.com/cheat sheet. We'll put the link here with this video. And then navidmoazzez.com/free report. Really excited to welcome you to the show here today, Navid. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Greg.
So yeah, definitely excited to get into virtual summits because I know that's something that's becoming bigger and bigger these days, and I've seen personally the success from that. But even just going back a little bit before you got into that, we share a bit of a common history, law school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me about it. Yep, it's the depressing law school years. That's how I refer. I mean, that's what I'm kind of laughing about it now. But back in the day, I graduated from high school. I had like a double, high school diploma, one from the US and one from Sweden. And then, I had this, my dad, he's a doctor. My mom is a teacher. So it was just like academic kind of path. That was the only thing I could pick. Like I could pick to become a doctor, dentist, engineer, and I guess a lawyer. And I got into law school in Sweden, one of the top universities in Stockholm, or in the entire country for that. And it's also free education in Sweden for that. So it's like, what else can you do, right? You don't have so many other options. So I just went in there. It was, good for the first few years because I didn't really know better. And then I just one day said, this is not what it's all about. I don't want to be chained to a desk all my life. And I pretty much said, this is not what I want to do. So, but I still didn't have any answers what I wanted to do instead. So I just kind of stumbled across personal development and got into read books like Think and Grow Rich, How to Influence and Influence People. And that's kind of the path. Stumbled across also the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So that's kind of, I guess, my path, but I didn't take action there. I guess that was 2010, 2011, and then coming into 2012. And I got a mentor there in 2012, helped me a little bit on the way with the mindset, but still procrastinating a whole lot. And I was still actually enrolled in law school, but I didn't, I was scared to kind of drop out of law school for some reason. It was just, maybe to my dad or also to my friends to say to them, hey, I'm a dropout. What else do you have going for you? And I didn't have anything else. I had a part-time job at the bank, making money here and there. And then finally, actually a horrible moment in my life and my whole family happened when my brother, he passed away suddenly, younger brother.
Oh, wow. And
that just kind of shifted my whole world to, now it's really the time to take action. And it was kind of, I guess, unfortunate too that it happened, that it had to get to that point because I had started before. I had started making some progress, but still didn't put anything out there. And then when this horrible moment happened, then I finally decided to take this adversity I faced to make something better and turn it into success there. So then I launched, finally, a few months afterwards, I launched my site in June 2013 with, navidmoazzez.com. It's pretty much, started documenting my journey. It was all I did, connecting with people like Pat Flynn, interviewing them, and then turning that, came to a podcast, which, was great for relationship building. But I didn't grow my email list rapidly. I came to the realization is maybe some people could do I saw John Lee Dumas, I saw all these other people, and it was everyone was telling me to do something. But for actually most people, when you look at out there, people starting out there, actually not growing their list quite that fast with a podcast, and they're not generating that much money. So I was like, okay, what should I do? I will live on the street if I continue like this. I didn't get that consistent revenue, and that's when I stumbled across virtual summits, which I decided to go all in, and just figure this out because some people were generating 6 to 7 figures doing this, and I was like, this is it. This is a great business model because I can take some of my skill set. I was already good at interviewing people. I've done it, for my podcast, even in the beginning, and then turning that into a great event, and then even getting potentially some partners on board to promote. That's kind of what's the whole concept, because I'm putting together a great event, and then they share that with their audience as well in return for I'm adding value to them too over time.
Great. And so for the people who, where I want to dive back into even a little bit more about how you got started, but for the people who aren't familiar with virtual summits, can you sort of sum up what a virtual summit is?
Yeah, sure. It's basically, I mean, most of your audience is probably familiar with offline conferences. So it's like putting that conference online, but you do it in a format with multiple speakers. You have like say 20 to 30. I have some summits like 40, 50 speakers now, even more. So it's just fun to play around with it. You can start, smaller with like 20 to 30 speakers. You have multiple speakers on there. Do it from like 7 to 10 days. I've seen working well for the summits we've done. It's like this event. So it's like multiple webinars. If you like see the online experience, like many in your audience, I'm sure they're familiar with like the webinars since you guys are doing the workshops. So it's like, it's very similar to that, but you have that on steroids, like putting that in an event. Like if you look at interview-based podcasts, same thing there. You have like interviews, but on a summit you have multiple, and it's usually a lot more actionable. And that's why I compared it to webinars, but on steroids as well, because you have many of those like interviews or even masterclasses, workshops on this virtual summit. And it can be either pre-recorded or live. My next one will be live, actually, mixed with a little bit like, live masterclasses, maybe some panels and pre-recorded sessions. That's kind of how I'm doing my next summit. And my students, most of the time, they start pre-recorded, and then they might throw in some live elements there. That's what working well, to not overwhelm yourself the first time.
And just going back a little bit, I mean, you mentioned Pat Flynn and building relationships with some really influential people there. Just getting into that, how did you go about starting to build those relationships? Because I know even just one of those small relationships can, or one of those big relationships can pretty quickly make a difference in your personal brand and your exposure. And how did you go about building those relationships? Yeah,
with Pat was a little bit special, I guess, in the beginning, because he was having a book that he was launching, his first book, Let Go. So I was on his email list, one of his email lists. I just saw that he was looking for people from his audience to interview him. So I saw this opportunity and I reached out. I actually didn't think he would respond to me because I didn't have a website or anything like that, but he did a few minutes later, and I didn't have any experience doing interviews and stuff like that. So I had to figure this out no matter what. I had to like set up a Skype interview, figure out how to do all these things. And, looking back, it really makes me cringe to like when I look at this interview now, but it was still my first one. So I probably would have practiced. I recommend my students to practice a little bit before they, interview a big influencer for their summits. Of course, they can get on with one of their peers. Something like that.
Who was your first interview?
Yeah, I've never done anything like that before. I was nervous as hell. Doing that from my student apartment in Stockholm, like sitting there, it was like horrible lighting and everything. I didn't have like a good webcam. I had just my horrible audio, was not even good. And then afterwards, I remember this very clearly. I had to send a recording to my friend because I kind of messed up something with the settings on, the Skype Ecamm call recorder, the recording software. So it didn't really work the way I wanted it to. And now, obviously, I know better. I've, practiced quite a while. But, in the beginning, I didn't know. And I didn't really have time to figure everything out. It came so sudden. So I just went right into it and I did it. And, I can see the difference really, like this first one, and how I can, do interviews now on the fly and, coming on doing these things. So it's pretty cool experience.
Wow, that's crazy. First interview with Pat Flynn.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I guess that's how it started. It didn't. I wouldn't say that led to, obviously it was easier to get other people. I could say, hey, I've interviewed Pat Flynn. So I started interviewing some people early on for my website, and that just helped I'm a non-native English speaker. So I didn't really feel comfortable in writing, in the beginning for my site. And now, I also laugh at that because now I'm writing these epic guides and stuff like that on my website. And in the beginning, I actually used the interviews in a way to add more value to the people I interviewed, and writing up this, really great blog post based on what they shared. In some cases, I also wrote up this guide when I launched my podcast, based on an interview with Cal Newport. I just summarized the work with what he shared in the interview and then shared it with Cal Newport. And he loved it because he said it was one of the best summaries of his work he's ever seen. And the same with like Robert Greene and other people. So I added value to them and got some big names on, even though my audience was very, very small at the time. And, a few hundred people probably, and then, growing that up to, I think I had about 900 or 1,000 people before I did my first virtual summit. So that kind of was the idea behind the summit, to grow the email list, which you do. People opt in for the summit for free, and they have a limited time kind of to watch it for free, and they also can upgrade to what they call kind of an all access pass or a VIP pass. So they, at least that's the way you do it. If you have a course business or something like that, for you guys, if you did it, maybe it would be a little different since you have a software. I mean, actually your competitor have done a few, so it's quite funny, but I guess that's the model you would use a little bit more if you did it. That works really well. So, but for someone, I guess, watching this, if you have courses and stuff like that, or considering a course, what you can do is like, okay, you want to grow your email list because you need this kind of email list to, sell your course. Then you do a summit, you grow your email list up to 1,000 or a few thousand people, and then you can even survey this audience you're getting from the summit and like really figuring out, okay, this is a very niche topic. Obviously, the more niche, the better. I always recommend my students go, find this profitable virtual summit theme, go niche. It's like, don't go with an online marketing summit or a health summit. Like one of my students is a fantastic example of this, because she was really skeptical in doing this and going into doing a summit in the health niche, because it's so crowded, right? But she did the women's strength summit, like super specific. So if you are like into aerobics, like you're not gonna sign up for this summit. Or if you're a man into strength, you're probably not gonna sign up to this unless you're like interested to see a lot of women lifting weights, So that's kind of that's what I like to share, because she was so skeptical, but she did it. She went specific. And then she, built this business of, into a new brand she wanted to build for herself, new business, up to about 20,000 subscribers, and generated over $60,000 in sales from this. That's just going into a new market. Yes, she had some relationships though built up, but even then, it was still fantastic results to get up to, 20,000 for just a new business coming into it.
Would you say a summit would be, if you're at, say, email list 0, would you say a summit would be a good place to start? Or, you were saying you had sort of 900 people before you started the first summit.
Yeah, good question. Good question. I love this question because I have both people in my courses. I have people starting out and they want to grow an email list. I have people that say they're a podcaster and they're struggling and, they want to build up to, the email list. They resonate with my story, obviously, since I tried, I did podcasting for a while, and then I wanted to transition, because you can still have a podcast. It's a great way to create content on an ongoing basis and all this. But then you should also be good at interviewing if you're doing podcasts for a while. So it's actually a good fit. So that's what I found. So that's a lot of people. And then we have like people like Chandler Bolt, 6-figure, even 7-figure business owners who do summits, like Michael Hyatt. You have even some big other names that I've seen doing, like Lewis Howes did it to kind of get more sales for his book. So it's this works anywhere, but you have to be clear of your expectations. I think that's the main thing there. People said wrong. They think, Chandler Bolt got 33,000 or 40,000 opt-ins from his summit. Well, he had more money to invest into it. It is not to say he was, crazy profitable. He had more relationships, more affiliates we got on board. But like if you're starting from scratch, like absolutely from scratch, I've had students getting up to 1,000 or a few thousand subscribers, starting absolutely from scratch, generating few thousand to at least 5 figures in revenue, and then getting more clear what they want to offer. And that's kind of when courses come in too, because you get clear. That's how I was a little bit, I would say. I mean, I didn't have this big audience, but people started asking me questions, about, ironically, virtual summits. I had no idea that I would get into that, but on my first summit, that's the questions I got. So I launched a pilot program there, and then kind of went off to this massive course. Now we have like 250 plus students, and it's just growing really quickly. And, also the success rate we have, like just even people, bigger names to implement this or hiring me for consulting, it just works very well. The system we have developed over time, like working with some big names.
Excellent. I love that you had no idea you'd get into teaching people that, and then it was just what the audience asked for, so you went with it.
Yeah.
That's a great way.
And that's what happened. That's what happens to a lot of people doing this too. They're going into it. They have like this specific topic. They want to create a course. I had one guy, he had a webinar mastery summit. That was what he called it. And then he wanted to launch this coaching program. So he used a virtual summit to fill up his coaching program with, high quality students. That's what he did. And there's many other examples, people using summits for, but even if you don't have an idea, you can do a summit first. You just be clear that it's, takes a few months to put together. But the main thing to say, don't require people to promote the first time. I don't even require people to promote. I'm just having this conversation with people, which we can kind of get into how I'm getting people to promote. I don't know if you want to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So you're doing a summit. So just for the people who aren't that familiar with it, you've invited a bunch of guests to the summit. Yep. Often these guests have big lists of their own or big authority or personal brands. And then, how do you kind of get them to go? Because especially if you're coming in with a lower sized list, or even if you have a huge list of people, but you're launching this summit, one of the greatest things I think you can get out of it is that all of your guests go and share it and promote it.
Yep.
And I like your point and I read that there's a great, on entrepreneur.com, there's a good article by Dory Clark, who's a friend of ours as well, who, talks about how you do summits. And one of the things I saw in there is that you're not requiring people to go and promote it. And then some people will actually say, if you're going to be on my summit, you have to send out emails and go and promote this.
I got one of those the other day, by the way, and I don't like to have this like pressure, and that I'm gonna share actually the framework I use for this, and it's very simple. When you're starting from scratch, you're gonna like send, if you can build a relationship beforehand, that's better. Like you starting developing the summit, planning it out and all that kind of stuff, then you can actually start building the relationships. If you know that you want to do this in 6 months or whatever it is, or 4 months, start building the relationship right now before you actually meet them, because that's kind of gonna set you apart from other people. You've actually retweeted them. Maybe you're a case study for their course. Maybe you've used their product. Then it's just
a cold email saying, be on my summit.
Exactly. They know you a little bit. At least they know you from social media. At least they know you from being a valuable member of their community. You should be on their email list. I mean, many times, I always do this. I mean, I know influencers do this too, other influencers. They actually, if it's someone reaching out for, let's say, a summit, the person would see if they're actually on their email list. And if they're not, it's a big chance they would say no. Like there's a likelihood that they would because they kind of, because like if they're saying, hey, I love your work. If you love someone's work, like
good point.
Yeah, you're probably on their email list,
So I think that comes back to honesty too, right? You have to say if you're saying I love your work, but you're not reading it, then I'm always honest in the way I reach out to people.
I'm not saying that you have to know everyone's entire, I don't know all my speakers that well, but I'm all about adding value to them. So I start the email, hopefully I know them, then you can just start the email. Hey, hope you're doing good, or something like that, or maybe start with something something relevant that happened. Maybe you hang out, the other week or something. Then start with that, and then you tell them like in 1 or 2 lines about your summit, and maybe like how many people you expect to get on it. So now for my next summit, we're expecting 30,000 plus people. It's a little bit easier. You have this social proof. Who doesn't want to speak in front of, at least a few thousand people will show up live to every session. So it's just much easier that way. But even if you starting out for my first summit, I said a few thousand people will the few thousand people will sign up for this. That's still good enough, right? For you, you're honest about it. And if you don't feel comfortable in you don't really know, you don't even mention it. If someone asks, it's very rare that someone would ask actually how many people. It's just, I like to include it now because we can have this social proof, and then we include some of the speakers that will speak on it. So that's kind of why I start. I have something called the ladder strategy. So I start from the bottom, like with people maybe I know or in my network, and then I work myself up the ladder. And then when I might reach out to someone cold, I already have a few people lined up, so I can name drop those people. Let's say now, name drop Brian Levesque, I can Neil Patel, Jeff Goins, etc. It just becomes so much easier. Who doesn't want to speak with them if it's a good fit and if they have time, So it's very easy that way. And then that's pretty much it in the email. And then I kind of end it with, I'm not really pushing them to say yes right there, because I always want to explore it further. If you're up for it, let's explore this on, a very quick, that's also a time constraint, like very quick call on Skype, 10 minutes or so. I think that's the best way to do it. Unless it's like this big A-lister, then you don't even need to have a call, because they're probably gonna be too busy the first time around. But I call it like C and B listers, people like up and comers and people with a decent sized audience. That's a good people for you to have this conversation, build that relationship more closely with, and maybe see how can you help them and focus on them on this call you're getting on because then you might even be able to get some people to promote that way. And that's how a lot of my students do it. They're just honest and, putting together a great experience for everyone involved, right? That's kind of how you do it with a really good content. So people they would do their audience a disservice by not sharing that with them. That's kind of that's how it works. That's how my students get really great results.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great approach of just building up such good value. And I've seen the stuff that if you put that great value out there, then you don't have to push people to go and promote it. And you're totally right in that whenever I feel pushed to promote things, it's much less likely that I would, as opposed to if I just see that, oh, this is amazing value, feel free to share if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we do ask, and we have this conversation with people, and now I'm trying to make it a no-brainer for some people. If it's a good fit, let's say, they promote my summit, and then if it's a good fit, maybe we'll do a workshop, or maybe we'll do something afterwards, and stuff like that. And I've gotten quite a few people commit to doing that, and by doing these pre-calls, it's actually something I didn't do for my first summit. Just I developed this over time. I got better at relationships. I found out that people like this personal approach. They like actually to have a short conversation. And also when you're getting onto the actual interview or the presentation you're gonna do with the speaker, it's just you have already built this rapport. And that matters a lot, not making it awkward when you're getting on there. And maybe you are new to this a little bit. So you can, it just works much better if you can have this pre-call. It doesn't work with everyone though. If it's if they're so busy, you don't need to bother doing it. But for a lot of people, it's really powerful. Yeah,
definitely, to sort of build up that relationship a little bit too.
Sure.
Great.
For sure.
Excellent. I was curious to kind of, beyond the summit stuff is amazing. And I definitely want, again, for people who are looking to get into summits, it's a huge way for sure to build that audience. And even as we've seen with Navid here, to figure out what it is that your audience would want to learn from you. And definitely in focusing in on that niche. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, again, at navid.com/free report, and then virtualsummitmastery.com/cheat sheet. We'll put those in there.
Sure.
Navid, there is some other stuff in that, you've kind of started to build up a personal brand, and build up your own authority, beyond, and part of that is tied to summits, but is there anything you'd want to share around just sort of taking that and kind of building your own personal brand? Because I know for a lot of us who are creating courses, building that personal brand or a brand around our courses is a big piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're building up this audience. Let's say whether you do a summit or not, but if you do a summit, you're building up that audience, and hopefully, if it goes well, you're getting a few thousand people. Then you have some people to talk to. What do you do with them? And then you're gonna serve them in some way, and also you're getting maybe more opportunities. That's what happened after my first summit. So as I said, didn't really share the results there. So I can share what happened was that I had about 1,000 people. So it's I had built up a small, personal brand to small audience. Yeah. And then I did the summit, got about 3,000 people opted in for it, by the help of some people, I partnered with and stuff like that. And I got about $20,000 in revenue from, actually it was in profits. It was in profits because I moved abroad with that money. That's kind of helped me quit my job and move abroad. That was kind of my starting point. I didn't have this big savings, and that helped me get featured on Business Insider, again, by the help of relationships like Navid Moazzez, a friend of mine, he introduced me. And that's because of another relationship. He was not even in the online space that much, and he used to work for Ramit Sethi. So I didn't always connect with the A-listers directly. I connected with someone on the outside, and then apparently it happened that he connected me more with Ramit's team. I became Ramit's #1 affiliate, and the month after my virtual summit, ranked in $40,000 in revenue there. So I've been very successful doing affiliate marketing for some products I endorse, and actually have used myself and have success with. That's kind of the way I do it. I do it in a very authentic and honest way. So I'm not pitching things I don't really endorse just to make money. That's not my approach, at least. Yeah. And then getting featured, I think that's been very powerful for me too with summits, with spreading. If you're talking about summits, if you type in virtual summits in Google, I own that. It's just mine. Nobody. It's gonna be very hard for someone to rank. Unless someone to create even something much better, then okay, I'm gonna give them that. But it's gonna be very hard. I spent my 10,000 plus hours doing this. So it's Entrepreneur and Huffington Post and many other big magazines. They have published me, and also being an entrepreneur on fire, stuff like that. That just helped me to elevate my own personal brand and then get more opportunities because of this. that all happened. It's all tied back to the virtual summit. I can trace everything back to virtual summits and relationships.
And it sounds like you've built really your personal brand then is very much built around a niche. Is like you advise your students to do is you've really focused on the niche. You're the virtual summit guy. That's how you've built your brand. Everything sort of ties.
In the beginning, though, that's the best way. When you're getting started, I was kind of broad. Like if you're talking about branding summit, was my first one. It was kind of broad. If I were to do it today, I would I would probably pick one topic out of that. I had so many topics on there. But it was just, I think it did well because it was it's the largest personal branding conference in the world. At least that's the way I positioned it. And it had like 88 speakers on my first one. It was like this massive event. But I think if I did it now, I would focus on a specific niche, like, now my next one is list building or product launches, courses. Some people, one of my students did on courses recently, did really well. So I think you might have been on that summit too, actually.
Was that Devin?
Yeah, it was Devin. Yeah. He just crushed it with his summit. It was really good. It was really professional. And he said, like, for his business, he said that just doing a virtual summit changed his life. That's a pretty bold statement. I got the email from him. I was like, wow, this is one of the best emails I've ever received from someone. And now he's gonna be able to build, his personal brand more around kind of courses, because he's already an expert from before, but he did, I guess, the summit to, grow an email list around this. So now that I'm already an expert on summits, I mean, I really need to do more. I have talked about it so much, around the web and stuff like that. Now I'm trying to get into more fields too. I just released a course on, relationship building called Connect with Your Heroes, for example. So that's like my second course now. I have, maybe a membership site coming based on, the summit I'm doing in September called List Building School. So that's going to be kind of an opportunity. But also I'm tying in my summits now. I'm all very strategic about this. So List Building School I'm doing in September, actually in the back end, we are selling a course. Which is really interesting. So I'm having this free summit. It's like, my summit's going to be live, some great case studies and stuff like that. And we are selling an all access pass or a premium version. But then at the end, we have a webinar where I would sell, maybe share how I got 30,000 people from this virtual. I mean, something like this, have like a good presentation, and then that will convert really well. That we did that for Chandler Bolt for the self-publishing success summit, and he had self-publishing school in the back end, did amazing. Like we had, I think, 120,000 just from all access pass, and then we got like a 250,000 or whatever we did, afterwards. So in total, almost $400,000 in revenue.
Wow. It's not a bad space to be in.
It's not bad, but I mean, that's like where you can get to. It didn't start there for me either. So even if you get a few $1,000s to like 5 figures from your first summit, a few thousand people sign up, that's still great. Like, I mean, you're gonna, the problem people do, like, I only got 1,000, 2,000 subscribers, and they don't do it again. Well, it's probably because you didn't have the relationships to like leverage this in a good way for your first one, and you just have to grow with it. Your next one can get like 2x, 3x, even 4x. I've seen in some cases.
Yeah, it's that launching pad. I mean, I launched my first online course in 2005, and I think first month sales I made $300. Had 10 students sign up at $30 a piece. That was the launch pad, and just went from there, right? So everything grew.
You can share from course launch to specifically this. Now we talked about summits a bit, but for my first official course launch, it was actually, I found that it was easier to launch that because I had all this experience with my virtual summits and actually doing some launch and helping some big names. So I did my first one for Virtual Summit Mastery in September 2015 to a list of about, it was a launch list, so I didn't launch to everyone, but it was about 1,500 people. Got over $60,000 there, in revenue. It was really good. And then we did it again, which I hope to do six-figure launch next time. Now we did it in April, and we did close to $200,000 in revenue from a small launch list of 5,000 people. So you don't need this massive audience to do it, and be looking to 3x or maybe 4x this in the fall. Who knows? I mean, now I'm just setting my goals a little bit higher, but still, this is the evolution. Like, do a good launch first. I mean, I used the video series and all this, but you don't even need to do that the first time. You can have a email-based launch and just having this sequence. I'm sure you guys teach about this quite a bit as well, like how you do this, but I used the kind of a very inspired Jeff Walker style launch with video series and some webinars at the end. It worked really well with some bonuses that expires and stuff like that. And just having this urgency and close cart. That's kind of how I did it. And my upsells also, I just included some and more advanced stuff for this last one. We had 2 tiers for the first launch and 3 tiers for my second one, for VSM, for Virtual Summit Mastery 2.0, and also some upsells. Like they converted 52%. So it's like it's just like trying some things, and it just worked for this one. So I might do some tweak. The only thing I would do different is to have a better webinar strategy to just get more sales from the webinars for the next launch. I think that's where we had didn't get enough people sign up for the webinars.
Yeah, I find the webinars are huge, but I'm curious about your upsells and your tiers. So what do you put into the tiers and the upsells?
That's a good question.
So a lot, and it's worked really well for me, but how do you break yours down?
So I did for the first one, I had VSM Pro and VSM Elite. I decided to change it up a little bit for the second one. So I have VSM Standard, which is pretty much just, the modules and the Facebook community, and kind of have this ultimate virtual summit planner where they can have checkboxes, stuff like that. So that's what I include in the standard, more or less. In advanced, I include the modules, obviously everything is standard, but I also include some advanced training sessions, some case studies, and I think it's Q&A sessions and some additional things there. And then that's the level. Like standard is $597, advanced is $1,297, and then we have complete, VSM Complete, which is $2,397. And in Complete, I include also some email access to me, which is working really well. Some insider sessions where I share behind the scenes of my own stuff, what I'm doing. So I'm just included a little bit more access, and they also got 2 calls when they sign up. So a little bit more access to me, and the rest is pretty much similar. And also they have a template which we created too. I spent a few $1,000s to develop all the pages people need for a summit, so they can just pretty much have drag and drop and do that. We developed this in Thrive Content Builder. I just wanted to simplify for people how to do summit, and hopefully we can develop our own theme or something solution. But for now we built it on Thrive Content Builder because it was the easiest way to get it out quickly for my students.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I'm sure that makes it a lot easier just handing them all that in the behind.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit the upsells though, because this is what I included in Complete. And I guess a lot of people, they say, oh, he doesn't include a template in standard and advanced, but then we have the upsells. So for the standard, I include the kind of have a lot of swipe copy and tech vault. So I included that as the first upsell, and second upsell was the template. Converted almost everyone took me up on that $197 and $297 upsells. So $197 for the swipe vault or whatever I call it, and then the template. And same for the advanced. So there I include some access to me. Some actually they get some access, or they have some review of their summit. That's kind of the first upsell for I think it was about $400. And then we have the second upsell, which is the template. Again, $297 there. So it's $400, almost $300. I can make it $700 extra there, which worked. It works so well. I'm almost surprised that it works so well. But a template I could see that it would work so well. But even the first one, they took me up on. A lot of people took me up on that offer. And then for Complete, I included just one upsell because I haven't figured out if I would include a more super premium upsell. So it was a $400, $500 upsell there as well, and it converted pretty well. But I would say, all in all, about 52% conversion rate, combined all the upsells.
Wow. Okay. And so, and it sounds like a lot of that value, basically, it's almost like a kind of a done for you solution where you're saying, look, I've taught you how to do it. Now I'll actually give you the template or the, all the stuff so you can.
We have pretty much plugged in where they should add a copy, stuff like that. We're actually working on something right now. My students don't know this, but I'm working on something behind the scenes where we are gonna have plug and play template pretty much for copy too. They know where to put, where they're putting the swipe copy and all this, which can be challenging. If I give them Chandler Ball swipe copy, it can still be hard for some people to, make it work for them, but we're going to make, fill in the blanks templates. So that's something we're adding more. I don't know exactly which tier I will put that in, but it will for sure be probably an upsell for something. If I'm not including that in standard, would be an upsell there. So just a good way to do it, and thinking about it how you can have this progression. And tiers is I love using tiers for at least courses, at least your flagship course. I think it's good to have it for.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And do you generally try and drive people to the highest tier?
Actually, that's also a good question. I thought that I would get more people into standard, because I read a post by Brian Harris on Video Fruit, and he said that actually if you don't get a certain percentage to standard, then I guess you're pricing the other things too low. So I was like thinking about this, but actually I think my pricing is pretty good right now. I get about, like most people sign up for advanced. So it's like a tiny bit more to advanced. And then it's about even between complete. I think it's actually maybe right now it's 2 more for complete than standard or something. I mean, it's pretty even there as well. Yeah. But it's just pretty cool that people see the value. I think that's the main thing I saw there. Yeah. Maybe I could raise it price even more when that's something I definitely consider. Maybe, but I still think people can get results with standard. The most important thing is to think, can people get results with just the basic version? If the answer is yes, then it's a good solution to have. Like you should not like strip out everything, but obviously we make it easier for people if they purchase advanced or complete. That's just, it's more included. They have more access, stuff like that. So that's how I always thought about my tiers.
Okay. So you get most of your sales to that middle tier then? The advanced
the middle tier, get the most, and that's some sayings that you should get the most for your lowest one. But I'm pretty happy with how it is so far. I'm getting very high quality customers.
Everything I've seen is all about drive to the middle, actually. Like get most of your stuff to that middle tier, and then
that's what I've heard too. I've heard that too. Like because that's like 1,297. So I guess I got about 100, I forgot like exactly, like 110, 112 customers, something like that for the launch. And then I haven't ran, I got a few extra like coming after, but it's about 200,000. So it's pretty, high, it's pretty high life, value of the customer there, I would say. And also they tend to buy other things from me too, like affiliate offers, because there's everything I recommend, they tend to say, okay, Navid recommends this, it should be good. And if you need this, we purchase it via him, So that's been working well for me.
Excellent. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're having great success with it, and obviously you know what you're doing with the summits. So, I mean, for anyone else here, is there other stuff you want to add about the summits or about any of this stuff? Building brand?
I mean, I guess the summit again, what people think it's just. It's not hard to do it, but I would say people should just have the expectations that they should put in the work to to do it well. And if you have a lot of other things and a lot of other things going on, yes, you don't. It's not that it doesn't have to be this full-time project. You can still take on clients. But what I did for my first summit, I read a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller and
read it.
Really amazing book. It's one of my top, I guess, 5 books I've read, and it changed everything for me, because I was doing my podcast, I was doing epic guides, I was doing everything pretty much, not bad or anything like that, but I didn't focus 100% and go all in with the summit. And when I read that book, I said, screw this, I'm gonna make the summit work no matter what. So if you can have this mindset with whatever you are doing, if there's a course launch or summit launch, or doing your podcast, whatever that is, you should have the mindset of going all in with this and making it work for you. If you can't do that, I think you should not consider it with the summit. Definitely not, because you should make it your one thing, because it can have such a big impact on what you're doing in your business. So you should go out there, spend the time building the relationship and making the summit a great experience for everyone involved, like your speakers, affiliates, and and also your summit attendees, obviously, have a great content.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Definitely focusing on that one thing and doubling down on it and putting all your energy into it. I see too many entrepreneurs and people out there who are sort of diving onto the next shiny object and always doing new and different things at the same time. It's pick one, double down, work hard at it. And, it might take time to get there and be successful with it. But it's much better than sort of building a little bit on something and then throwing it away and a little bit on the next. Because even with yourself, right, your first summit wasn't, it was a success, but it wasn't, I'm done, let's retire.
Yeah, let's, I mean, let's also, let's mention that also. Like if you do something and you think that's going to just shift everything. If I would have stopped there after my first summit, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't sit in Barcelona or wherever I am in the world to do interviews like this or do multiple six-figure course launch. It wouldn't happen because I actually hustled a lot afterwards too. After I got these initial email subscribers, I did a lot of partner webinars too with people, building the relationships. I even doing these launches for courses, grew my list, quite a bit. So I'm kind of mixing it up. So I'm doing at least like one summit a year. I'm doing 2 major course launches, and then something I want to get into a lot is evergreen launches too. So that's or evergreen promotions. So I just kind of have this recurring revenue stream coming in every single month. That's kind of, I guess the missing piece for me to like make that work. And that's why I created my second course after I already had made my first one work really well. So I didn't like go into, okay, now we have done this launch, let's go into another course. That's a mistake, because there's probably a lot of people who haven't heard about, let's say in my case, Virtual Summit Mastery. So rather, figure out how you can get it in front of the right people, maybe partner webinars, get affiliates on board for your promotions, stuff like that. That's what worked really well for me, to really focus on that course, making it work, getting, being known for virtual summits. So now when people mention me for summits, I mean, everyone usually mentions Virtual Summit Mastery if they're going to do a summit. And obviously that helps me to generate a lot of buzz for it, get people in for my launches and, consulting too from time to time.
Excellent. And so actually now you mentioned like focusing and doing the one thing and kind of focusing on that and putting everything into a summit if you're going to do it. How long or how much time would you sort of expect to plan a summit? If it's your first summit, you're going to dive in. Should I block off, a day, a week, a month, 8 hours a day, 70-hour weeks?
I mean, you see it as a process. I have students doing this in like 2 months. I mean, they're more the exception than the rule. They probably have some experience with online marketing a little bit at least. If you don't have experience, don't stress yourself with it. Like it's like with anything. If you're going to start something new, you're going to have a learning process. And yes, whether you're in my course or not, I cover everything. I have some free information out there. You just check it out. That just figure things out. I think a few months, 3 months is. Some people in my course do it in 3 months. Others do it in 4 to 5 months. Like if they really struggle with the tech, for example, but there shouldn't be too much of an issue anymore. We're trying to like simplify for people. Even with my template, we might release that to the public at some point, even if you not like courses for some reason to join courses, we're gonna like try to release that. But for now, the template is only available for people in my program. But then it's just like like you've done with courses, like having like a software or something like that. We just trying to do a little bit the same thing for summits, even for people in my course, to help them do this faster and faster. Excellent. Not to have them hire designers and all this if they don't want to. If you have the budget for it, fine, go with it. You can probably have a team. If you're by yourself, expect to spend like 3-4 months, at least 5 to 10 hours a week doing this. But that's just anything. If you're gonna do a launch for a course, you're gonna spend a lot of time too. It's not like Summit's the same way. It's the same way if you want to get great results.
Yeah, that's good. And that's good. That's interesting that you say that, because you're right. It's good for people to kind of have an idea going in as to what to expect. So they're not thinking, you just hit the button and make it happen. But
I get, not if you want to do the way I teach, not the way I teach summits. And I guess that's why some people say, okay, it's just, I've surveyed my audience several times after my course launches. So I just see what people say. And some people say, I guess I wish you had like a light version. I mean, I'm not, because I get that. I really do. But it's like at the same time, I would do them a disservice, because they would probably just create like this, not a good summit or whatever it is, like not get great results. And then they would spread my brand further. I don't want to be associated with that. I want to be associated with like really high quality summits that because people can really see if it's like, if it's based on my teachings usually now. So I just like to have, that stamp on their summits, so they don't require speakers to promote. They have this great approach to speakers. And Seth Godin, for example, was one of my student summits. He never says yes to summits, and he actually endorsed that summit. Like, this is a really great event. You did a really good job with it. So that just happens when you have this good approach. You actually want to have the speakers on because you really genuinely enjoy their work, right? That's the main thing. You don't get them on board because they have this massive audience. So you want them to promote you.
Excellent. Well, hey, Navid, I really appreciate your time and sharing all of that about virtual summits. I think it's definitely something that some of our audience would be interested in checking out and trying out. If you want to get more information about Navid and virtual summits, check out virtualsummitmastery.com. And there's good advice at virtualsummitmastery.com/cheat sheet. And then we got navid.com/free report, but I'll put the links in here as well. And also one thing that I found interesting, I'll share as well, is there's an article by Dory Clark on entrepreneur.com about six-figure virtual summits that features you. And I'll share that with people as well, because I think that's also a great starting point for people too. But thanks so much for joining us and for sharing all of that information. And wow, congrats on all of your success with all of this. It's been pretty amazing success story for you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.